Nose by Rhys Timson. Hi, my name's Rudy and I'm an alcoholic. It's been 364 days since my last drink, but I still worry about falling off the wagon. Or should that be sleigh? I've done that a few times actually. It isn't easy being sober in my line of work. I spend most of the year doing nothing. The months of idleness are hard on someone with my weaknesses. You know how the saying goes, the devil makes work for idle hooves. These past few years, I've been through some dark times. And I don't just mean the polar night, but I feel that. Slowly but surely, I'm clambering back up to the daylight. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could he lose his way with that shining red conch of his? Well, believe it or not, I didn't always look like this. Way back when it was a plain black snout like all the others had. Now people say, it's so red it glows. They even made a song about it. And they get their kids to sing it every year, and I cannot tell you how much that hurts me. Years ago, before I took the big job, and everything spiralled out of control, I used to be like every other reindeer. I would spend my days doing reindeer things, wandering the fjords, munching on shrubs and locking horns with the other males in a desperate attempt to gall them to death before I could mate with the most desirable females. Simpler times. But it was never enough. Even as a young calf, I wanted more. So, when the recruiter came to visit our herd, I hoofed at the chance. He promised me a career in global logistics. Lots of foreign travel and a limitless supply of carrots. And here's the kicker, I would have to only work a month or two a year. Who could say no? My friends tried to warn me. Said I should be happy with my lot, but I was an ambitious young ungulate. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have stayed at home and chewed some more moss. The recruiter was a little man, pointy ears and felt hat. He lifted my tail, pulled my antlers, stuck his fingers in my mouth to feel my teeth and gums. "You'll do," he said, in a high, childlike voice. He took a small bag from his belt and stuck his hand in, and he pulled out some sparkling rainbow-coloured dust. "Sniff this," he said. "It'll make you fly." I did what he said, and my world changed forever. We landed at a sprawling fenced-off compound in the North Pole, and it was there I met the guys. They're all famous now, of course, but what's less well known is how my 9 comrades got their names. Blitzen was Blitzen because that's what he was when I met him. Blitz, that is. Then there was Donna, so called for his favourite post-session takeaway. He had his snout in a styrofoam box when I arrived and he never looked up. Prancer was so called for his tendency to dance on tables. Dancer was the same, just a little more grace. And Dasher earned his nickname because of how often he made a sudden rush to the conveniences. Cupid and Vixen always ended up snogging. And Comet, well, that was a shortening of his full nickname. The other word which rhymes with Comet was usually something he did after 8 or 9 drinks in. And lastly, there was Slash. Yeah, no one remembers him now, but I do. I'll never forget you, bud. That made 10 of us. Santa's 10 reindeer. We were a team, a family. The guys passed the time by playing cards and munching hay. They sniffed more of that rainbow powder once in a while and drank from brown bottles smuggled in by the elves. I resisted their vices at first, but it was cold. There was nothing to do. My resistance didn't last. "Go easy on the powder, kid," Slash told me not long after I arrived. "I've seen it do some awful things to a reindeer's snout. Things you wouldn't believe." I believe you now, bud. I didn't know how long it was before he came. It's always dark in the winter there at the pole, and we were almost always wasted. It was so hard to tell. He stood in the doorway, a giant, silhouetted by the light from a lantern post behind him. It was the morning after, or possibly the night before. There was no way of knowing. Ho, ho, ho! He boomed. And in the stall opposite me, Comet did what he was most famous for. I gave up an attempt to stand and settled for collapsing in an undignified heap. Season's greetings! He looked around. This genial old man with a white beard and a red suit smiling widely at us all. He was exactly what you'd expect him to be like. And that was the problem. Donna was polishing off the last crate of scotch, hoof trembling as he raised it to his lips. "Little bit early for that, isn't it, Donna?" the big guy said. And he turned and hefted a bag of something from just beyond the stable door. "I've got fresh moss," he said. "Your favourite." He offered it to Donna, who batted it away with his spare hoof and snarled. "Maybe later," the boss said. "Now, who's ready for a practice run? December is just around the corner, and it's time we showed our new recruit what we're made of. Welcome, Rudolph! Welcome to the family!" I tried to wave, but I just ended up following Comet's lead. The years after I joined the sled team were a blur. There are gaps the size of glaciers in my memory. For a month or so before the big day, we practiced our manoeuvres. Santa had a whole model town on the complex, and we performed takeoffs and landings and all different kinds. We flew up and down from flat roofs, gable roofs, dormer roofs, and we all flew to the high-rise flats and down to tiny cottages. We practiced drills for dealing with emergency situations like presents overboard, aircraft flight paths, and incoming missile strikes. That last one is a bit of a Hail Mary, but I guess it was meant to make us all feel safer. So, I never thought of myself as an addict. Just someone who needed a bit of help getting through the day. And if I allowed myself the occasional blowout, then that was all right. I worked hard, and I deserved to be able to let loose once in a while, but once in a while became all the time. And before I knew it, I could hardly get out from my straw in the morning without a sniff of the old rainbow powder. And that's how it was for all of us. We stumbled through the years, more or less intact. Sometimes something would happen that would make us clean ourselves up for a while, like lifting our heads above the water during a long swim, but never lasted. We always dipped beneath the waves soon enough. We stopped for a while when Blitzen disappeared, then came back days after with half an antler missing and no idea how it happened. We paused for days after Comet puked over a children's present, so we had to double back to pick up replacements. We almost lasted a week when Cupid nearly gored Prancer to death over something he said about Vixen. And we stopped for a month when Slash relieved himself on that exposed electrical wire. But even then, we went back to it. I'm pretty sure Blitzen was wrecked at the funeral, actually. In the end, what finally did it for us was nothing more than a look. Nothing more than two innocent eyes on the hideous messes that we'd become. It was Christmas Eve last year, and we were shit-faced, as usual. Santa was trying to ignore it, as always, pretending we were just giddy with excitement that Comet had just an upset stomach. We were somewhere in England and we landed on the roofs of a row of terraced houses, hitting those tiles like a ton of bricks. I'll never know how he didn't wake people up. Santa had just done his chimney squeezing trick and would be gone for a little while. Dasher and asked Dancer to crack open a bottle, and Dasher just went white. He left it back at the North Pole, he said. We were all dumbstruck for like a minute or two. The thought of sobering up before the night was just too much. Then Blitzen shrugged off his harness and marched over to the chimney. "They'll have brandy down there. They always do." One by one, we all followed. Now, you might think it's impossible for 9 reindeer to fit down a chimney, but we'd seen Santa fit through loads of openings in all sizes. Santa was like water. He could find his way through any crack in a house and squeeze himself in. You just had to have the confidence, I guess. Or maybe it was just desperation that saw us dislocating our legs and snapping off our antlers to get down through that sooty passage. We found Santa sitting in an armchair halfway through a mince pie. Little glass of amber liquid by his side, as expected. "What are you doing here?" he said, dropping the pie and struggling to his feet. "You shouldn't be here!" But it was too late. The owner of that house had a well-stocked drinks cabinet, and Blitzen had it open before Santa had even finished talking. Now, I don't quite know the order of what happened next, but I remember Blitzen pulling out every bottle those people had. Whiskey, vodka, gin, port, even bloody ouzo. Santa kept on telling us to stop, but he was just whispering and shaking his head. And at some point, he started to cry. And then we all did what we were known for. Blitzen tipped a bottle down his throat and reached for another. Cupid and Vixen downed some tequila and started writing on the sofa. Donna stumbled through the kitchen in search of food. Prancer and Dancer clambered onto the table, and the next minute it was in splinters. Dasher tried to fire the conveniences, but found the Christmas tree instead. And Comet emptied all 4 of his stomachs on a weeping Santa Claus. And then we heard a creak. And in the living room doorway, there was a little girl, standing there, just observing us all. She wasn't crying, wasn't screaming, she was just watching. And that was the worst reaction of all. I saw it all very clearly, all of a sudden. My life. The Emperor had no clothes, and he was just covered head to toe in vomit. Santa had pushed us all into the hearth and bundled us up the chimney. He made it right somehow. He had a way of doing that. He can make a single night last for days after all, but I knew we had to make it right too, all of us. There have been slips since, but we're trotting in the right direction. And that's why I formed this group, so that our experience could help others. Maybe this glowing red honk of mine might be a lesson. Might help lead others through the storm and safely back home. We drink glacier water now, and we get our 5 portions of moss every day. We go for early morning canters and hit the hay at a sensible time. Well, at least what I think is a sensible time. Still, hard to tell. And yeah, some people might say we lost our edge, but at least we're still here. Most of us anyway. You rest easy, Slash. We'll miss you, bud. Thank you very much.